Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this introduction to FlowJo version 11. So you may have heard that version 11 is out. There are 2 webinars on all the different features and differences with version 10 done from John Quinn in the past couple of months. So today will be actually how to analyze your data into version 11. We will be going through a workflow for data analysis. And today I'm here with my colleague, Ioannis Panetas, who will be really happy to answer your questions in the Q&A box. He will be monitoring that. I don't have the Q&A box opened up, so if there is any question, Ioannis, just unmute and talk to me. Okay, so I'm really excited today. Okay, first, let's see what we can do. What we can do today, what we can achieve in this hour. Okay, I will try to cover as much as possible. So I'm Serena. I've been with FlowJo for about 7 years now, almost in the next couple of weeks. And I'll be really happy to walk you through this new version of the software. So before we actually dive into the software, I think you may have seen this slide already. What is the rationale behind making a new version of FlowJo? So people may ask, why are you making a new version instead of just making version 10 better? Well, version 10 got to its best. So we had to update the code base to a modern language to improve the performance of the software, first of all. And we try to make enabling comparison the primary design goal. So with this new engine, we can now build in more tools for automation, and we're starting to build the foundation compatible with cloud compute in the future. So we will work through this, and there will be upcoming releases. So please keep an eye on that. If you have not signed up to our newsletter, that's the way to stay updated, to know about all the new webinars coming up, all the new tools coming up, all the new versions, new plugins, and so on. So first of all, if you want to use FlowJo, you will need to download it. FlowJo version 11 as version 10 is a desktop application. So you will need to download it from the website on your local computer. And if you navigate through the website, we're going in a second onto that, you will see there are several places where you can download the software. Just we didn't want to we didn't want anyone to miss the exact button where to either download the software or start a free trial. The first thing to mention about version 11 is that it is not supported from dongle. So the access to version 11, it's only via subscription, which means that you will need to have a portal account based on your username and password. So if you don't have one and you want to try out version 11, you may want to start a new free trial. Okay, right here on the screen, if you do have a portal account, you can download version 11 right away on your computer. And version 10 and version 11 will coexist for a bit. So no worries, you can keep both versions on your computer and you can navigate from one to the other based on your actual needs. So before we go on to the website and I show you how to do that, I just want to remind you that besides having this webinar today on FlowJo version 11, today seems to be a day of webinars, so there is as well a panel design webinar this afternoon that you can join. So if you haven't done so, you can sign up, and I'm gonna type this link in the chat for anyone that wants to follow it. Okay, just type it in the chat to everyone. Okay, here it is. So if you want to sign up, this is a panel design webinar and is the beginning, let's say the first part that will drive you to a second webinar that we will have in October on how to analyze the data coming from this design panel and so on, everything in FlowJo. Okay, so first of all, let's see how we can download FlowJo. So I can go onto the FlowJo website right here. And as I mentioned before, if you just navigate through the FlowJo page, you will find it right here, either download now or start a free trial. You can find it on top, download version 11 or version 10. So again, we're not taking away version 10, it will still be there. You can start a free trial as well. And then I want to highlight the fact that we are still supporting you with all the material. We're building more and more material over day. So if you go under Learn, you will find the webinars as this one. So you will find the upcoming webinars. There will be another introduction to version 11 in August for anyone that misses this. And anyway, we do record our webinars. So if you go all the way down, you will find all the recorded webinars previously. So you will find the 2 webinars about version 11 and the rest of the webinars that we keep having on advanced features of v10 and on BD Research Cloud. The same way, under the Learn button, you can find the FlowJo University. So I would strongly recommend you, the moment that you download the software, to check our videos on the installation. So if you go on the FlowJo version 11 software right here, you will find 2 different tabs, one on with videos on how to download and install version 11. So there are 3 different videos depending on the specific machine that you are using. And then if we go back, we will find some videos on Metadata Manager, graphs and platforms, summary chart, preferences, and so on. And you can just navigate on to the next lesson right here. And as for v10, we still have a documentation. So if you go under Help Documentation, you will find the entire documentation for version 11. And even in this case, I recommend you, if you can, if you are enough patient, to look at the licensing information right here, which explain how to get a license for FlowJo if you don't have one, and how to log in or sign in to the software. Now, this is an important thing to mention because, as I mentioned before, FlowJo version 11 is supported by the portal account or BD Access portal. So what happens when you download the software, either you are on a Mac or a PC, you will have 2 installers right here. So one is for FlowJo and one is for the access to FlowJo. So please install both of them. If you are on a Mac, like in my case, I will just need to drag and drop them into the applications. But if you are on a PC, you will be driven through the installation of both of them. Okay, so it is really, really important that you install both of them on your computer. And then once you have done that, you can start by launching BD Access Portal. So first you launch BD Access Portal and then you can launch FlowJo. Okay, especially at the first installation. So in this case, you will insert your username and password and you can just log in into that. Okay, so easy peasy. Oops. So the first thing that I will do, I will go under my applications, as I already installed the software. And I do have FlowJo under my applications here. And as you can see, I do have FlowJo version 10 and FlowJo version 11. So I can just double click on version 11. It will be launching. And now here I have my sign in. So if I haven't signed in this morning, I will just click on sign in. Here is my username and I will insert my password. Here it is. So now I've logged into version 11 into the software. Now we call this one the workbench, which is basically our old workspace. So the first thing that you may see is that the moment I log in, I have right away the links to the website or to BD Research Cloud or to our documentation or to the FlowJo University. So you actually do not need to go on the website, but you can access right away from here. So in case you don't know how to do something, you can still access through the window of FlowJo. Now, one thing to mention is that on top you will find several tabs. So there are several tabs right here regarding the files if you want to open a new workbench or open an old one, even though you will have a list of old workbenches right here, so you can access right away. If you go under view, you will see that you can zoom in or zoom out the screen. So in case some people think that this is too small, you can always zoom in, or you can zoom out. And there are some shortcuts that we are also increasing in terms of numbers. So in this case, you can just type Command plus and it will become bigger like this, or Command minus, and you can zoom out. Another thing that we introduce are the themes. Now, this is the basic, let's say the default theme of FlowJo, but if you navigate under themes, you will find this one, which is the basic one, and then the chorus one, which is more like chorus style, or a dark theme. So depending on which is your preference, you can choose to navigate through a light theme, a dark theme, to my dark theme, Serena dark, or Serena light, and so on. So for the sake of today webinar, we will do it in a light theme. And if I want to start analyzing my data, I can just open up a new workbench. And you will see it's much easier to navigate at this point, because what we see right now is just one single window. So we don't have anymore all the multiple windows to open up a plot and so on, but we just work on one single window, which is called the workbench. And the idea is that we mirror our bench in the lab. So basically we have all our samples on the left, all our reagents on the right of our bench, and then in the middle is where we actually perform our work. You will find several icons that are similar to version 10. So if you want to just add samples, you can click on the tube right here, or you can just drag and drop as you used to FlowJo v10. So if I want to add samples, I can just click on add samples from here, and it will ask me which is the location. So basically, where do I have my data? I have my data on my desktop. It's called, and I have a full folder with several data. So for example, in this folder of my data, I have a couple of different sets. So I will just use today a basic training data, and I can just click open. And as you see, it's quite fast in terms of loading the data, but what do we have today? So if you have seen any other basic webinar or introduction to version 10 webinar, you will see that the dataset is exactly the same. So just to remind you what the dataset is about, this is a phosphoflow and intracellular cytokine staining when we thaw and rest cryopreserved human PBMCs overnight. We did a first stimulation with PMA plus inomycin, and then we stain for viability and surface antigens. So there is a first staining on the surface, and then there is a second stimulation for other 20 minutes. In order to stain for intracellular antigens, we fix and permeabilize the cells, and then we stain for, indeed, intracellular antigens. So what do we have, or what do we want to look at? It's basically two different stimulation conditions where we have four potential combinations. And what we want to see at the end of our workflow is how phospho-ERK, interferon gamma, and perforin are actually changing over the stimulation time. So what do I have within my samples? I have two donors that have 4 different conditions. So in total, 8 full stains. Then I have fluorescence -1, which are my controls, and I also have compensation controls. So just to go back to the initial question that we received in the Q&A, I will try to cover compensation if I can in this session. Otherwise, there will be another session in August, and we will keep doing webinars, so no worries, just stay up to that. And as well, there is always the documentation that we worked on, so you can find all the steps into the documentation as well. Okay, so now I have my samples, and the first thing that I see is that all my samples fall under acquired data. So if I look on my analysis tree, this is called the analysis tree. I have all my sample sets right here. I have my gates or populations in the population tree, and then I have my samples pane right here where I can see all the different samples. All of these can be adapted in terms of size, and you can scroll through that, and then I will see that my data are basically divided into compensation data. So now I have my compensation controls right here that I can look at. And I have another set, which is another group, which is experiment data. So basically, if you remember version 10, this is all samples, let's say, but now they're automatically divided into compensation data and experiment data. And then I have some subgroups because I may have different subfolders within my experiment data, or I may have some different set of compensation controls within my compensation data. In this case, I only have one set of compensation controls, which are right here, and one full set of data, which are together in the basic training data. So here I have my FMOs and full stained. So eventually I could divide them into 2 different groups. So I could basically right-click, select the experiment data and right-click on create child group. And same thing as before, I can name this group FMOs. I can select file name to define this group. And I can say this group, include in this group all the files that in their name contains FMO. And here it is. So now here I only have my FMOs. Here I still have all of my samples, but eventually I can generate or make this group in a way that only contains my full stains. So I can remove the samples that I don't need. And I now have only my 2 donors of full stains. So each donor has 4 different conditions. Okay, I can also edit this name of the group and call this full stained. And here we go. So now we have FMOs, full stained, 2 different colors. Now, keep in mind that we don't have multiple windows. So we're looking at everything in the same window right here. I can increase the size. And in this case, I can see all the samples that are included in each individual group. So if I move on to my FMO, I will see all my FMOs. If I move on to my full stained, I will see all my full stained. In terms of activity tabs, or what we use to navigate through FlowJo, we've tried to build a kind of workflow on the left right here where you can access all the tabs. And so ideally, what you want to do when you analyze your data, it's making your data available or readable or understandable. And you can do that within the Metadata Manager. So this is what includes basically the keywords that we also had in V10. And now when you navigate to the Metadata Manager, you will find all your keywords right here. So I have my rows that are samples, and then I have my columns, which are all the different keywords that were actually associated to the files from the instrument itself. So I see my patient ID right here. Eventually, I will have a stimulation condition, and you can scroll down and find the keyword of interest, or If it's easier for you, you can pivot this table, and now we have all the keywords on our rows and all the samples on our columns. You can also look for a specific keyword within the filter by keyword tab right here and just use that keyword. If you want to add a new keyword, you can add the keyword enter name here and a value that could be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can just click add keyword, because this, once you've added a name, it will become available, so you can then add the keyword. In this case, I have all the keywords that I need, so basically I can just avoid that. If you navigate to parameters, you will see all your parameter names and parameter stains. Now, this is really useful whenever you forgot to add a parameter stain to your parameter, or you made a typo, for example. So you have a little pen right here. You can edit the parameter stain in case you need. And finally, we have a parameter sets. The parameter sets will allow you to create a list of parameters that you can use to filter out basically what you're interested in. So eventually I could create a parameter set just for my intracellular markers. And if I select them and choose add selected right here, I can name this parameter set intracellular. Okay. I have my zoom bar all over the place. And now I have a new parameter set right here that includes only these parameters. And these may be really, really useful, especially when you want to sort out the parameters, or you have a really long list of parameters. And once you have used all your initial, let's say, markers to gate or pre-gate, then you just want to focus on a specific set of markers, and that's what you want to do. So you can basically create a parameter sets for that. So once we have correctly annotated the data, we can move on to the next step, which is quality check. So the quality check icon is pretty much the same as the one that we had in FlowJo version 10. So if I navigate to the QC right here, I will see that I can now finally QC my data. Okay, it's just, this zoom bar is really, really annoying. So I can quality check my data, and we strongly suggest you to do that because we don't want to end up analyzing data that are actually artifacts or something that is wrong. So sometimes you may have some anomalies, fluorescence anomalies, and these could actually corrupt your final analysis. So to run the quality check, you will see that this window is empty right now. So the first thing that I need to do is setting the parameters that I want to check. So I will check my fluorescent parameters, and now I have all my fluorescent parameters right here. And this quality check is a FlowAI based quality check. FlowAI is an algorithm that allows you to annotate, to evaluate fluorescence anomalies based on 3 different checks: so signal stability, flow rate, and dynamic range. So basically, we're going to see if the signal was stable during the acquisition, if the flow rate was stable during the acquisition, and if we do have or not events that fall outside of the dynamic range detection of the instrument itself. You can always remove these checks if you know that something was wrong during the acquisition, or if you know that you changed the flow rate, which I believe many people do. But in this case, I'm just going to perform all these checks and click apply. So as you can see, the quality check is almost immediate, so you don't even have time to think that it's already checked. And what we see here is a parameter versus time, so the overlay of the parameters that you see on the top right here versus time, and then you see the flow rate during the time of acquisition. So whenever I have a drop of the flow rate, which deviates from the median, I will see a yellow circle, which means that I had an alteration of the flow rate, and it's basically where the events were removed. And underneath, you will see the signal stability of each parameter versus time. You can increase it. And here, everything was stable And you can then navigate onto your next sample and just make sure that everything was fine. Now, whenever I move on to the next sample, you may see or may realize that I have now two gates here, bad events and good events. So two new populations. These new populations were created after my quality check. And now the number or the percentages of events is changing while I move from one sample to another, which is indicating basically how many cells were excluded based on those anomalies that the algorithm checked. Okay. Good. Once we have done the quality check, we can move on to the gating part. Okay, so after that, we have the compensation part. Again, I'm not sure I can cover compensation. I'll try to come back to that once, once I've finished my analysis. So I can move on to my graphs and I can start analyzing my data. Now, it's important to mention that whenever you create a gate, it's good to look at where you are located. So if you are on the experiment data and you create a gate here, basically all the child groups will inherit that specific gate. So I'm on the experiment data, I'm fine here. I want to start gating from my good events. So I just want to consider my good cells and I can start isolating my lymphocytes. So on the top left, you find all the tools to create a gate. We can use an ellipse gate in this case to isolate our cells. Okay, and these will be my lymphocytes, correct. I can scroll down, make sure that everything is fine right here. Good, I like it for all of them. And now you see how easy it is to analyze the data in this case. For those of you that may ask, you will still need to move your name gate for the time being. So hopefully in the next release, we will have it placed outside of the gate. And so within my lymphocytes, I now want to gate on my singlets, for example. So to change the parameters on the axis, you can just click on the axis itself and you can either work on all parameters or select a parameter set. Okay, so the parameter set that we were talking about before, like the intracellular parameters, to have a shorter list. In this case, I'm okay with all. I'm gonna select my forward high parameter versus forward area, and I can now create my gate around it. And I can use a polygon gate for that. Again, if you double click, it will close automatically. I can assign a name to this gate. Good. So now everything seems fine even here. And I can then move on to my dead cells or isolate my live cells. So I have a dead parameter right here. You see, you can scroll down all your parameters. And I would say that probably I need some adjustments of my axis. So I may need to transform my axis, make this a little bit wider. So what I can do in this case, as for the axis transformation, as we had in V10, I can click on the T button right here. And I will have my parameter listed on top. Even in this case, I can just transform full parameter sets, so multiple parameters at the same time. But in this case, I may just want to transform my AARD parameter, and eventually I may want to make this one a little bit wider. So just reducing the cofactor, click apply, fine. At this point, I can scroll down, look at individual samples on that. I can choose one sample to gate on. Again, I will choose, for example, my rectangle gate in this case, and I will have my live cells. And now my gate has been created on all my cells. What's the advantage here? Is that I can look at my events or at my samples individually, like I'm doing in this case. I can either scroll down each individual sample and look at it, or I can look at all my samples at the same time. So This is what we call virtually concatenated file. So I can turn on my VCP. So now you see a single tube. If you click on that, you see multiple tubes. You see 3 different tubes. And now what is showing me here, it's a combination of all the events coming from all my data. So you may imagine, like, for some kind of gating, this is actually helpful because it helps you to automatically gate only once and get all the events that you need. So rather than moving from one sample to another, adjusting the gate and so on. Okay. Now within my live cells, I can gate on my CD3. So I would choose HLA-DR versus CD3. And even in this case, this is a real clear case where I want to transform my data. So first of all, I have too much white space here and here. I may reduce the number of positive decades just to spread my data a little bit better. So what I will do, remember to click on the T button when you want to transform, because otherwise you will have the last parameter that was modified. So if I click on the T button, now I see my CD3. I can remove some positive decades here. And I can as well change the width basis and make it a little bit nicer. Okay. And we can do the same thing with HLA-DR. So I can remove one of my positive decades, make this a little bit nicer. So at least I can see where my CD3 population is actually starting. Let's say the positive population is starting, same for the DR and so on. There are, again, several ways you can create a gate. There is a pencil gate, which I'm really bad at. I will keep it as CD3. Now I have this gate on all my cells right here, all my samples. So within my CD3 gate, I will finally look at my CD4 and CD8. And that's how you generate a gating strategy. Quite easy. Even in this case, I need the same thing. I need to change my axis a little bit, to transform my axis a little bit. Okay, just to visualize my data a little bit better. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, I may do something like this. Okay, maybe even here. Okay, good. So now I like it. I can look at it by sample. So in the graph gallery down here, you may see that you have different options. So you have a graph gallery or an image wall. The image wall, of course, will work when you have images, and especially coming from the FACSDiscover platform. So in this case, we do not have any imaging here. So I can keep looking at the graph gallery, but instead of looking at it by sample, I can choose to look at it by parameter, which will allow me to have a fixed parameter on my axis, which I can decide if it's a fixed Y or a fixed X axis. In this case, I'm batching everything on my X axis. So I keep one parameter on my Y axis, and then I see all the rest of the parameters on my X axis. And this is really useful to understand if you have any problem in your competition, for example. Or I can look at it by ancestry. So the ancestry will show you exactly the entire gating strategy that you performed to get to this plot right here. So this is my CD4 versus CD8 coming from my CD3 population. You will have information regarding the gating as well on top of your graph window right here. So you have the full gating strategy and you can navigate to each individual plot. But basically what I see here is my CD4, CD8 from my CD3 cells that are coming from my live cells, my singlets and my lymphocytes. Okay, I'll pause for a second. Okay, I see a couple of questions. Can you kindly share the recording of the webinar for a recap? There will be the webinar recording on the website in a couple of days. Can you save a total analysis, including the report, also as a template? Not for now. So you can save the entire data analysis, but not as a template. Templates are coming. Okay. And I see Yanis is taking most of the questions. So thank you so much for taking all the questions. I hope I'm not going too fast. And I hope I'm actually interacting with people that have some knowledge about FlowJo. So on to the next gates. I will create a gate on my CD4 and CD8. As you can see, my favorite gate is the rectangle gate, but remember you have options to create a quad gate, curly quad, or a spider, as you do in V10. Okay, so I'm just gonna create a quad rectangle gate here for my CD4 and a rectangle gate for my CD8. Now, all my samples under experiment data have the same gating strategy, which is absolutely fine for me because that's what I want to do with my data, right? I want to use the same gating strategy for my full stained and for my FMOs, at least till this point. So which options do we have to visualize the plot? Now, you may be familiar with this. This is called pseudo color and is based on density. So from red to blue, from the more dense area to the less dense area. In case you want to change your plot, you will see that on the left, there are all the tools to either transform your data or select the parameters that you see on the axis or to change your plot. Remember, you can always close these wings on the three dots right here, so you can make it bigger. So if I close everything, this is quite big as a way of visualizing my data. If I want to change the kind of plot, I can just navigate onto the settings. And here you see I have my pseudo color with different palettes now. So I can use the classic palette from FlowJo, I can use a grayscale, or I can use a rainbow, or I can use Virides, like the one that you prefer, cool, and so on, blues. So just go wild with that, purple blue. You can also change the background color if you want. So let's say that I want to use the Virides and I want to have a weird background, right? So it's not really nice. I'm just going to go back to my FlowJo Classic, but that was to show you the different plot types, the different palettes that we have for the pseudo color. And of course, we still have the histogram view. Remember, when you are in the histogram view, of course, you just see one parameter at the time. So before we were looking at CD4 versus CD8, we had two different parameters. If you are on a histogram view, you only have one parameter and you see negative and positives for that. You can have a heat map statistics as well, or you can have a contour. You can increase the level of contouring or decreasing the level of contouring and so on. And of course, you have a dot plot. So you can choose to smooth the dot plot or not. But honestly, I will go just for the pseudo color. And instead of looking at my side scatter versus that, so you have different options to change your parameters. You can click on the axis right here, or you can go on the X and Y, which indicate your parameters. And here you will find the list of parameters. Here you see my intracellular markers parameters. What do you want to change? If you want to change the parameter on your x-axis, y-axis, or if you want to have a color axis. So in this case, this will be my CD4. Okay, no, sorry, CD8, and then I'm changing here my CD4. Okay, here we are. Okay, good. So now when I'm in the CD8, so I'm just going to go back to view by samples. In my CD8 population, I now want to look at my intracellular markers and create my FMOs gate. So here I have a list of FMOs. You can always navigate or make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so you can read the full name. And probably I would select directly the FMO that does not contain interferon gamma. And in this case, I will plot CD8 versus interferon gamma. You can always search for it. Okay, and here it is. This is my gate, or this is my FMO for interferon gamma, which means fluorescence -1, that I have all my parameters in this tube except for interferon gamma. So this is basically my 0. I can choose to transform this a little bit as well. Okay, and I can just make my gate here. So this will be my interferon gamma. And now if I look at my virtually concatenated file, I actually see that this is really useful because probably I want to set my gate a little bit further just to make sure that I see exactly where my negative is ending and where my positive is starting. For those of you that perform high-dimensional analysis, maybe the virtually concatenated file, it's more easy to understand. But if you don't, you still should perform titrations. And this is a really good way to look at your titrations. So you can see all the different dilutions in a single plot and understand which is the better one, the best one to give you the best resolution and the best separation between negative and positives. Okay, so the next gate will be on my phosphor ERK and perforin, so I can just navigate onto my sample that does not contain interferon phosphor ERK and plot. Oh, this is perforin. Same thing here. And I can make my gate around for my positives for perforin. Okay, seems quite good. And then finally, I have my phosphor ERK, which is still my intracellular. Remember, I could use here my intracellular parameter set and just get the list right away. So up to you, which one better fits your needs, which one it's easier for you. Okay, and I can finally set my gate right here. This would be my phosphor ERK. And then I can create. Now, all my samples actually have the full gating strategy. And it's quite easy now to navigate through my samples, look at them. Probably I should change some gates here and there, but the analysis, it's technically done. And it's much, much easier compared to what we used to do before. Well, much faster, I would say, for sure. So if I look at my interferon gamma, you remember you can always go to the previous sample by clicking on the up arrow right here. Well, previous gate, sorry, not previous sample. You can navigate through the samples by using the right and left arrows up here. Okay. So now we have our statistics, we have our files, we have our gates, we have everything. We can move on to the next step and add actually some meaningful statistics, like, for example, the MFI for our intracellular markers. So pausing for a little bit here, I see 2 questions. Yanis is answering one. Oh, one is really interesting. Is v11 more expensive than v10? Not at all. They're used with the same license, so doesn't really matter which one do you use. It's the license what matters, and it's the same one for v10 and v11. Okay. Okay. So in the next few minutes, if I want to add or change a gate, I see there is a question in the chat. If I want to change a gate, I can just go onto my sample, change the gate, and now the rest of my samples have the same gate right here, but this one has a different gate because I just changed it. Okay, I think this was a an open question, so I answered live. Okay. Okay, let's just go for a second on to, let me apply the same gate to all of my samples. So what I can do is apply gate to group and resync all. So I have exactly the same gating for all of my samples. And I want to create now or add now statistics to my data. So in order to add statistics, I can either add the statistic onto my sample panel right here. So I can select the statistic tab and add median of, for example, I could do this, phosphor ERK, perforin, and interferon gamma, add statistic and close. And now you don't see them in the table because I have them right here under my panel, under my samples panel. Okay, so whenever you use this icon right here, this will add a statistic to your samples panel, as well as for the keyword. But if you want to create a table and later on you want to create a chart, which is actually what we are going to do now, I will need to drag and drop a set of samples or individual samples based on what you want to create the table for. So I could literally either drag my experiment data and have my FMOs as well, but honestly speaking, I do not need the MFI within the FMO. So I will just drag and drop my full stained. Now I have my 8 samples for different conditions, and I can add the specific statistics for the population that I'm interested in. So I want interferon gamma, phosphor, and perforin coming from my CD8 population. So I could drag and drop my CD8. At this point, I see the frequency of parent, but if I move onto my statistic tab on my settings right here, so I see statistics, I can just say, okay, now I'm in the CD8, so select the population in the analysis tree, CD8, fine, median of what? Phosphor ERK, perforin, and interferon gamma. So I can add multiple statistics to that and just click Add Statistics. I can remove the statistics that I don't need. And I can add keywords to the table. So if I click on keywords, I can choose, for example, patient ID, and I should have one keyword, which is stimulation condition. And I can add those to my to my table as well. Okay, now I've created my table. If I go to the properties table, I can add a new one. I can duplicate this one, or I can remove this table. I can assign a name, or I can export the table into Excel. When you export the table, you can choose to include summary statistics or not. And again, how do you choose the summary statistics? Right here into the settings, what do you want to have? Which are the summary statistics that you want to add? I see there are tons of questions in the chat, so let me try to answer that. Can you export the image with EPS or SVG? Not yet. Can you choose to show outliers in contour plots like in V10? Not yet. But this is one of the main features that we are working on, so coming soon. Okay, I will answer this one on V10 later on. Is the MFI the geometric mean in statistics? No, the one that I added, it is median, not the geometric mean. So you can choose when you move on to the statistics tab right here, if you want to use median, mean, geometric mean, and so on. So I personally prefer the median because it's less sensitive to the outliers compared to the mean. In terms of geometric mean, it really depends how coherent, I would say, are your values. So if you know you keep or you keep having the same values over and over and it's really reproducible and you don't have any difference, then you can either use geometric mean or mean, that's fine. But sometimes we may have some samples that have really low values or really high values, and in that case, if we do use the mean, for example, we risk of having a value which is too sensitive to the outliers, so to the values that are really, really low or really, really high, while the median sits in the middle of the distributions of the data. So you're less risky, there's less risk of being influenced from outliers. I hope this answer is helping you. Okay, how can you export this table to Excel? There is right here the export table tab, so you can just export it to Excel. Okay, so I see Yanis keep taking the questions. So once I have my table ready, I can finally go on to my next step, which is the new feature that we have in v11, which is building a chart. So what we usually do is creating a table into version 10, then we export that into either Excel or GraphPad or Prism, whatever it is, and then we create a chart. Now, actually, you can create a chart directly in FlowJo. So if you go on to the next tab, which is the chart tab right here, it will tell you choose a source table that contains keywords. So you will need to have a keyword in order to create a chart, or otherwise you will just use the sample name, which I personally don't find it really useful. Again, if you want to go into details of each platform, there are several videos on the FlowJo University that you can double check. So at this point, I have my source table right here, which is the table that I just created before, and I can choose my category for the chart. So I can distinguish, for example, my patients or my simulation conditions. That's up to you. Which one do you prefer? If you want to see differences between your patients or if you want to see differences between the conditions. Probably in my case, I want to see differences within condition. So I have a STEAM condition keyword that I can use. And if I click on the arrow right here, I can select which are the conditions that will be displayed or which are the values of the keyword that will be displayed in my chart. So these are my 4 different conditions. And what do I want to see? It's basically the numeric factors that I select right here. So I want to see in my chart for these 4 different conditions, the median of phosphor ERK, the median of perforin, and the median of interferon gamma. Here you go. So now I have my 4 different conditions. I'm comparing between different conditions. I'm comparing the 3 different statistics in different colors. You can always set the color of interest, the color that you prefer. Okay, up to you. There are tons of different palettes there. And you see this error bar is huge. What is that? This is my non-stimulating. No, probably this one. Okay, so I can add, remove, and adjust everything in my chart, and it's actually live. So I can as well show it for the patient ID. Now at this point we have patient ID plus simulation condition, but I don't like it this way. So I usually look at it just by condition. You can group by condition, which means that there will be one chart for each condition. So if I go like this, now I'm grouping by stimulation condition, which means that I'm looking at the specific statistics. So median of phosphor and median of perforin. I can add interferon gamma if I need. And this is condition 1, condition 2, condition 3, and condition 4. So up to you if you prefer to look at it individually or just everything at the same time. Again, on the tab right here on the Manage tab, you can name this chart. You can add a new chart, duplicate it, or remove it. You can choose the chart type. So you can have a bar chart, you can have a pie chart if you want. You can choose the chart statistic if you want the mean, the count, or the sum. You can choose the color palette. Again, there are a lot of color palettes right there. So depending on the one that you prefer. I like this yellow and orange, honestly, quite a lot. But I'll just go back to FlowJo Classic. So what's next? So instead of looking at a pie chart, probably it's easier to look at a bar chart. I can show the table underneath right here, or I cannot. Okay, so I can show the legend, I can rotate the text, I can show the error bars or not show the error bars, and I can choose which is the statistic. In terms of statistics, actually, you can go on to the statistic tab right here, and you can as well choose a statistical test. So it's true that now we are looking at the values right here, but we don't know if this difference is significant or not between the different conditions. Probably not in this case, but maybe I do have a significant statistic in between NS and NS plus PI for my phosphor ERK. So to see if that's the case, I can choose a t-test or I can choose a Wilcoxon. So it depends on how many statistics do you want to compare. And then I can say, okay, which is my baseline for comparison? My baseline is actually NS plus NS. And then what do I want to compare to? I want to compare it to my 3 different conditions. I can choose a threshold for significance. So by default, it's set to 0.005, but you can add another threshold if you want. And at this point, I can finally show the asterisk for significant. I can show the line connection, and I can show the p-value. Okay, so now I'm performing all the different statistics right here. I have the p-values, I have the connection line, the connecting line, I have the asterisks, and I can move on to my next step eventually. Okay. The next step will be my report editor. So into the reports right here, I have a white page as we are used to for the layout editor. And I can just start dragging and dropping my samples or my populations. So for example, I can drag and drop my CD8 right here. So now this is my interferon gamma. I could do the same. Okay, instead of looking at interferon gamma, I can actually look at something different. Okay, which is, oops, my apologies. So I could do, actually, I never remember how to do that, but there is a way to do that. Phosphor ERK, perforin, let's choose perforin. Okay, so, and then, oops, apologies. I can take my CD8 and look at perforin right here. You may notice that this seems like a small space. It's actually just zoomed in. So if you go on this arrow, you can fit the screen. And so it's a really actually bigger page that we have. You can choose the orientation. It can be landscape, it can be portrait or PowerPoint style, or poster, or a custom site. So you can choose the inches, centimeters, you can choose the width, height, and so on. You can zoom in and zoom out, and if you want to move around your report, you can use this hand right here. Okay. Now we have all zoomed out, but if I zoom in and then I want to move away, that's how I can do that. Okay, so maybe I want to add my CD8 as well. Okay. Probably I should have changed this gate. So in case I need to do that, I can just go back to my graphs and change it. And I can add charts, for example, to my report if I need. So instead of adding it to my initial report, I can create a second page for that and say, okay, on the first page, I just want plots. On the second page, I want the chart. And so if you go onto the charts box right here, you can just select the chart to add or the table. So if you click on place chart in the report, now I have my chart right here. And if I want to batch, as we have done in the past for V10, I can say batch me all my plots, but do not batch my chart, because overall I'm seeing the same thing. So I don't need to create multiple charts because my chart is just a summary. It's already a summary of my analysis. So to do that, I can remove this icon on the wheel right here. And this means that will not be batched. So if I go back to my plots, I now have a view batch option. And I have my different batches right here, my different layouts for each sample. But maybe I want to have multiple samples on the same page. I don't want just one sample on each page. So what I can do, I can go back to view source. Okay, that's my initial set of plots that I want. And then into the batching functions right here, into the batch options, I can just say, just use 3 rows and probably 2 columns. Not sure if it may. Okay, so now if I go on to view batch, yep. Now I have 3 rows, 2 columns, 1 and 2 for all my batches. And finally, I have my chart because this was requested not to be batched among my samples. We are on the top of the at the top of the hour. It's 11:02. As there has been a request for compensation, I just want to let's give you a quick overview on compensation. But I recommend you to look at the documentation for this. So in order to have compensation on your data, well, to create a compensation matrix in V11, you will need to have compensation controls. They will go automatically under your compensation data, and you will see you have a group for the different compensation matrices that you have. Now I have one compensation matrix, which is acquisition defined right here. And I can then, if I want to create a new one, I can just go on to the compensation data and just go next. Okay, here I have my wizard and the automatic gate on sites created, negative and positives. We do have auto spill on, which means that there are no actual gates on negative and positives, but the full spectrum of data, well, the full range of data is taken in account from negative into positive. There is an auto spill algorithm. So if you want to learn more, just algorithm, an auto spill webinar. So if you want to learn more, please refer to that. We want to calculate traditional compensation, and here underneath we have the association of each sample with the correct detector, the parameter name, and then the population defined. Okay, now you have a preview. If you want to see the matrix, you can just go on preview. And here is our matrix. Now, the best thing here that you could ever imagine is if you want to look at a combination or see exactly where does it fall into the matrix, And if you see something wrong underneath, so this is one parameter versus the rest, we don't have anymore the n by n, I can just select my plot where I see a weird behavior, and this combination is automatically selected here. So now I don't have to scroll anymore trying to find what is what. I can just navigate onto my samples and highlight that automatically. And it works exactly the same way if you just navigate onto your matrix right here. Once I'm happy with the matrix, I can then create the matrix itself. Now, I don't want to take too much time on this, but just to highlight that you can have spillover spread matrix if you need. You can look at the similarity matrix. And then once you are happy with that, you can just create the matrix. When you create the matrix, you will see that now I have a new matrix within my compensation matrices. And I can also look at this matrix on specific samples. So just move on to the sample, and then you can just look at that specific matrix applied to that sample itself. Now, we haven't applied the matrix yet. Again, same as in V10, if you want to apply a matrix to a sample, just drag and drop it either on the group or onto the individual sample. Okay, so I hope I covered most of your requests or most of a full workflow. But there will be, again, there will be another webinar on August 7th. This afternoon, there is a panel design webinar if you're interested in. And in case you need any help, there is always FlowJo@bd.com, which will help you find your answer, or will be happy to answer your questions. Let me see if there's anything in the chat that I can help address. Can I get the p-values using these platforms? Yes, you can. Where can we find plugins like FlowSum and so on? There are no plugins in V11. We have advanced features or advanced algorithms right here under platforms. For now, we have t-SNE and X-Shift. So you basically have everything for a high dimensional analysis workflow, which is going from quality check to dimensionality reduction with t-SNE to high dimensional to clustering with X-Shift. This was an introduction to FlowJo, so it's basic webinar. I think we're planning of giving some advanced webinars as well, where probably we should cover compensation and dimensionality reduction and clustering. Is an up-t-SNE algorithm. So not the traditional t-SNE, but is the optimized one. Okay, and here you see just the action for that with the downsampling included during the process. Same thing for clustering as X-Shift. So I hope I answered this question, Letizia. My advice for those of you that, well, my thinking for those of you that are doing deep, high dimensional analysis, probably the amount of tools that we have available for V10, it's way higher than what we have available for V11. So I would recommend you to just stick a little bit more with V10 if you're doing deep, high dimensional data analysis, which means you're using algorithms like FlowSum or Peacock and so on. But for those of you that do conventional data analysis, I think V11, it's way straightforward, easier to use, faster, much faster, includes the quality check, charts, reports. So it's really big step and an advantage. Okay. So I think there are a few questions that haven't been answered yet. Can plots be overlaid in reports? Yes, just drag and drop them on top of the other. Are changes in the compensation matrix synchronized when the matrix is applied to a group? I'm not sure what you mean with that, but if you make a change to a matrix, every change that is on that matrix will be applied to the group as well. Is spectral unmixing available in V11? Yes. In the compensation tab, there is either tab for traditional or spectral. And that's why we also do have a spectral plot on the top. So you can do spectral mixing, yes. Is the statistical test also testing if the test can be applied? Not sure I got this question right. Yes, it should be testing if that can be applied or not. If it cannot be applied, you should get an error. So I really don't want to take more of your time. Please, if you do have any question, specific question, write us at flowjo@bd.com and we'll be happy to support you and take all of your questions. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you probably next time. Bye-bye.